After a devastating accident and a bankruptcy, my guest today, Bernadette McClelland, spent the money saved under her mattress investing in herself, becoming a coach with Tony Robbins, and going on to her own coaching business. And then in her 60s, her and her husband decided to sell everything and move halfway around the world, coming to America. Listen in to today's episode as I interview the inspiring Bernadette McClelland.
Hello, dreamers. Welcome to the Late Starters Club, giving you the inspiration, mindset, and tools you need to start something midlife and beyond. Remember, it's never too late to follow your dreams. Hello, Late Starters. It's your host, Andrea Vall, and today I am joined by Bernadette McClelland. She is amazing. I'm just going to say welcome first, and then I'm going to launch into your amazing accomplishments. So welcome.
Thank you, Andrea. It's so cool to be with you.
Yeah, very cool. Just to let you know a little bit about what Bernadette has accomplished, she is a high content speaker on sales, leadership, and storytelling. She is from Australia originally, but now lives in the United States, which we're going to dive into a little bit. She is a natural storyteller, inspirational speaker. She's been a high performance coach for Tony Robbins. She has been a sales mentor for Harvard MBA students, and she's an award-winning author, top 50 sales speakers, amazing stuff that she has done. And she has a new book out called Shift and Disrupt. So welcome, Bernadette.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah, so I'm connected with Bernadette through our National Speakers Association here in Colorado. And when she first joined our group and came to her first meeting, she was just like a bubbly, energetic, like warm person that just you love to know. And I have just been fascinated with her story about moving halfway across the globe, uprooting everything, and coming here to the US to start a second half of life, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, tell us a little bit about what led to that decision and where that came from.
Yeah. Look, I was going to say a couple of drinks, but no, I've been coming over to the United States probably now every year for around a decade.
Mhm.
And the reason for coming over is a community of women sales professionals like myself. And it was a fortunate invitation to come to Boston 10, 11 years ago. And I'm so glad I did because there's this community of women who are just like me and we raise each other up. And it was 2018. And so in Australia, you as an employee, you get 4 weeks annual leave as paid time off. I don't because I run my own business, but my husband
Right.
does. And so Tim would come with me every year and we would just take off and have a little holiday. And so we went back home in 2018. And Tim said to me, he said, I wonder what it would take to move and live in America for a few years. And so we investigated it. And now there were 4 options that you could take. And we spoke to an immigration attorney. It was either put a chunk of change on the table, it was to be sponsored in by a company, put your name in the lottery and win it, or marry an American. Of course, all of those were off the table. And so we just thought, no, it's not going to happen. And then the immigration attorney said, there is one other way. But she said, it's very restrictive. It doesn't happen all that often. But she said, it's when you can self-petition direct to the immigration department and get an immediate green card, like an immediate residency without it being time sensitive or tied to your employment or whatever it may be. And so we thought about it and we looked at it. There are 12 categories on the website for this particular category. And so I submitted like a school proposal, a school project rather, and I submitted 9 categories. And I am a hoarder when it comes to brag files. And I'm thinking about these brag files that went back to my corporate days before the internet and having memos and things, pieces of proof. And so I submitted it and 12 weeks later, immigration approved it.
Wow.
I know,
Wow.
12 weeks later. And so then COVID happened and the immigration policy, the immigration process got pushed out. And we thought, nah, 2 years down the track, this is not going to happen. Our daughter had a baby, our son got married, and we thought, that's it. We're here in Melbourne forever. And then it was the final week in November of 2021. And there was one more step that we had to go through, and that's simply an interview with the US consulate in Sydney. And so we lived in Melbourne, and I got this email in the final week of November, and it said, unfortunately, the US consulate's renovating their offices in Sydney, and your appointment in 2 weeks' time is in Melbourne.
Oh.
And so that's like, oh. So we went along for the interview with the US consulate, and 5 weeks later, our passports came back stamped. And so we have immediate residency for the USA. My husband got it purely for carrying my bags. And so we landed in Denver, and we love it. We love Denver. I told our 2 adult children, we're only going over for a year to 2 years. It's been 18 months now. And we're just really settling in beautifully. But yeah, in answer to your question, we sold everything. We rented our house out, and we kept a little pod, a 10 by 6 foot pod with our treasures in it. But apart from that, marketplace had a workout like you would not believe.
Wow. So you really planned on, you just said, let's just sell it all.
Let's just do it. Let's just
Yeah.
do it. And from a logistical perspective, our kids who are adults gave us their blessing. And my daughter, she says to me, oh, Mum, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about that? Oh my gosh, this is going to be really interesting to watch play out, because I don't know, we just did what was in our hearts and our gut. And just the universe just completely opened up. Like,
Right.
it was just almost magical. We had enough points for a one-way ticket to Denver. We had some great support here. Everything just fell into line, and it continues to do so.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, everything the red carpet was rolled out practically to say, you need to be here. And how did you choose Denver? What went into that
Yeah.
thought process?
So we were always going to move to Atlanta because we have friends there.
Hmm.
And then I came across to Denver in December 2019, just before COVID hit. And I went to a program. There was a program here for speakers, which is where I met people like Kendra Prospero and Susan Frew and some other wonderful people, and also some of the women in the sales professional network. There's probably about 5 of them that live here as well. And so that was my first foray into Denver and people in Denver. And we'd never thought of Denver because I'm not into snow. And then I found out that Denver had 320 days of summer, and I was there in December and there was hardly any snow. And so flying home over the Rockies, I just looked down at the Rockies, and I know this sounds a bit woo, but in my mind, I could just see this circle, a blue and green swish, like a child does with water paints. There's just this blue and green swish. And then there was this long gray streak. So the long gray streak was Atlanta, the blue and green circular swish was Denver. And I thought, no, that's it. We're going to Denver if we get the green card.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So you were just listening to your heart and your gut the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Logic. I think if we really went to logic mode, I think fear might have stepped in and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're just like, it's supposed to happen.
Yeah, that's amazing. And definitely fear pretends to be logical, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I really do agree with that.
Yes. So that's really amazing. And your business is virtual. So you were able to then pick up and move and still have your
Yeah.
business, right?
Yeah. I came over here knowing I would have to start brand new. Late Starters Club, absolutely start brand new. It's great to have some friends here and a support system. But from a business perspective, I am going out brand new. Networking, I never used to network in Australia, but I'm networking here. I love it. There's a different energy in Denver, which I'm really enjoying. And yes, I've been fortunate enough to bring business with me. So the virtual aspect has allowed me to coach and train and speak through the camera. But what I'm finding here is that face to face is really starting to open up again. So that's where my focus is going to be,
Mhm.
moving through that speaking channel and the consulting channel as well. So
Yeah.
brand new.
Yeah. Yeah.
I figured if Colonel Sanders could start at 65, then
That's right. That's right. Exactly. And he also was knocking on doors and getting out there and networking and making those connections. So
yeah.
that's important. So that's great. But you also had, I've learned a story that I wasn't familiar with you in the whole bankruptcy when you
And
turned 50, that was a journey. Now, did that happen right when you were in your 50s, or was that
yeah, it was 2009 and
Mhm.
we had my husband and I owned a business. It was a wholesale and it was a retail part to it, a wholesale part and an importing part. And it was in the pet supplies industry.
Mhm.
And we had just had a container load of designer dog beds that we used to sell. And they'd been delivered. So there were all these beds on the floor in the warehouse, and I'm doing the Goldilocks thing, too hard, too soft, just right.
Mm.
And I pulled myself up on the fork by the forklift handle. And unbeknownst to me, as I pulled it up, the handle went backwards and the forklift went into reverse. And it did huge tissue damage to my shin. And then to cut a long story short, the penicillin that they gave me eventually to counteract that shut my liver down. So on the 2009, I was bedridden. And as
Oh
a
my
result, we
goodness.
lost everything, like the full bankruptcy story. And so I started to get better. My 50th birthday was actually, I think just around that was when I was started able to start walking again and being able
Wow.
to stand up after sitting without needing help and all of that kind of stuff. So it really was starting again from a physical perspective. But also both of us ended up being on welfare. And in Australia, we were on welfare on Centrelink for 6 months.
Mm.
And we were able to get a tiny little bit of cash out of the business in the last couple of weeks because our admin girl had been putting it into the bank account that we weren't able to withdraw from. And so all this kind of
Mm.
stuff. And so we looked at this, literally had this cash in a little black evening bag under our mattress. And we lived in a country town in Victoria. And we looked at this money and we thought, okay, we can do one or two things. We can keep it under our mattress and I can go get a job, probably at the local chemist or pharmacy, or we can take that money and invest it in me. And we did the latter. And so that was scary because not only were we bankrupt, but what little cash we had was now invested in me. But that was a decision that it's a bit like sliding doors. You don't know what's around the corner
Right.
until you actually
Right.
do something. And so that was 10 years ago. And now we're over here and life is different. Yeah. So that there's the blessings. There were blessings in bankruptcy.
Yeah. Wow, that's just amazing to go from and there you hear those stories about people, I was homeless and living on a couch and then now
Yeah.
but it, it is amazing. So that's just been 10 years, a 10-year span to
Mm,
go from absolute
yeah.
zero to now being able to move halfway around the world and have a thriving business. So I think that's just especially in your 50s to build that back up, and that's just amazing, and I think that's a great message for anyone who's feeling like they're at rock bottom to
Yeah.
know that you can make a decision that's going to change your life and take a drastically different swing upwards, so that's great.
And I think the word that you used there, just to know, the word know, there, people will say, how have you done it? And yes, I'm probably lucky I've got good resilience genes. But also, Tim and I, we really focused in on a couple of things. And one was we were debt free, and that was a lifetime goal we'd always had.
Uh-huh.
And so it was gifted to us.
Mhm.
Not just in the way
Right,
that we wanted it, but it was gifted to us. And it was like,
right.
okay, we can go anywhere now. We can literally rewrite the script. And so it's money is not a driving force. In fact, we're not financially, we are not what you would class as wealthy people at all. We're really focusing in on a couple of things. One is our role model status for our children,
Mm.
because they are in their 20s. And so, both of them are late 20s and mid 30s. And their lives are just taking off like ours did at that age. And they're going to hit roadblocks.
Mhm.
So we would really focused in on, okay, how can we be the role model for our children that says it's going to happen, and how you get through is you've just got to have a knowing that it's going to be okay.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing to do because, again, that fear can kick in and just the mind starts going, and what about this? What about this? What about that? Like your
Yeah.
daughter was talking about with moving halfway across the country. And if we listen to that voice, it's just going to stop us from doing amazing things in our lives. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And it's just a part of it. It's human. It's just such a human biological factor that it
right,
kicks in.
right.
And we've got to override it. And I keep telling myself that every morning when I need to do exercise. I've just got to keep overriding it.
Yeah. And did you have a time where during that time of bankruptcy, did you have some dark moments where it felt like there wasn't a lot of hope in there? Or what how did you
Yeah.
push through that?
Yeah. So, like I said, I think what I did, I know my husband had a totally different experience. So I went into complete logic mode. I went
Mhm,
into, okay, what do I need to do?
mhm,
So it was a real, I'm just trying to think of the word. I just went into, oh, what's the word I'm thinking of? A robotic kind of like, okay, so
mhm,
what do I need to do? Start at the end, start at the end. What do you want to do this quarter? Or what do you want to do? Where do we want to go?
mhm,
First things first is we've got to move back down to Melbourne. So I got really logical about things.
mhm,
Move out of the
mhm.
country, go down to Melbourne. This is what we need to do, find a rental. So it was all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I think it was while I was in bed. So I literally was bedridden and I needed help with everything. And I think it was in those moments I lay there thinking, okay, I'm not going to be here very
Mhm,
shortly. Like I am on my way out.
mm,
And it was things like, okay, if I make it through, not when, it was if I make it through, what are the things that you've regretted?
mm,
And it was just a couple of, that's why we've probably gone all in with what I'm doing now, because at the end of it, when you put your head on the pillow for the last time, it's not about money. It is about those things. What are those things that I wished I'd done or said or not said or whatever? My husband was a different kettle of fish. He, being the provider and protector of the family, felt that he was letting everybody down. And so he had some very dark moments. And he doesn't mind me sharing this because we've both shared it together on video on LinkedIn,
mhm.
especially through COVID when businesses were going,
Uh,
downhill. But there
right.
was one particular time and I'd started my coaching journey. So I was getting better now. And he had gone to the doctor, and this may be relevant to your listeners as well. He had gone to the doctor and he came back and he said, Dr. Power says I've got depression.
Mhm,
And I hit the roof. I know, because my mum had been on medication just about all my life
mm,
for breakdowns, depression, and
mhm,
I did not. I was so scared that I would lose Tim.
mhm,
And I said to him, no, you're not going on medication. And he said, who's this about, you or me? Anyway, he said, okay, I'll go a few weeks without any form of medication. And with that, I had learned at that point, I just started to work with Tony Robbins, and there was something I'd heard that if you go into a depressive state, you are thinking about the past and you are thinking about yourself.
mm,
And so we had this conversation and he went into the spare bedroom for about a month,
mhm, mhm,
sat in the dark room and he
mhm.
built my website.
Ah,
Now, I'm not saying people out there that have depression, that's not what I'm saying. It's not
Right.
about, it's about him in that particular
Right.
point in time. And so
Right.
he did. And so I think that's part of our journey, is always looking on what's next and not
Mm-hmm.
looking at the past, but moving forward in different ways.
Right. Right. That is definitely a great way to train your mind, because I think that if you just have some goals ahead of you and to really see if you can drop the past and leave it, then that can be a good way to just keep moving forward one step at a time, right? So, yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't heard about the past and yourself. There's different ways people respond to depression, and of course everyone has their own unique journey, and but as I'm sure as a spouse you have a good vision into his personality and knowing what might help him, so that's
Yeah. Yeah.
great that that worked.
Yeah. And everybody, I just want to make that clear. Everybody is on their own journey. And yeah, totally.
Yeah. So yeah, so you started the coaching journey with Tony Robbins while you were bedridden and started to learn about that and get into that. Is that how that worked?
When I got better, that was the investment, was
Uh-huh.
into a diploma. It wasn't with Tony at that stage. So I went to like a coaching school in Melbourne, and I did an 18-month diploma in everything: executive coaching, business, sales, you name it, every form of coaching, and came out with my diploma. So I had to complete that in honor of us investing all this money. And
Right.
and it was, while I was doing that, I saw a free coaching session on online and with a Tony Robbins coach. So it was obviously a sales
Sure.
strategy for them. So I
Right.
did this free coaching, and I said to the guy, Steve, who was on the phone, I actually thought he was a coach, but he was the salesperson. And I said, I'm just going to copy you. I'm just letting you know. And so anyway, I got off the phone and my husband said to me, so what did they try to sell you? And I said, well, he didn't sell me anything. And I said, but obviously it was an intro into the coaching. And Tim said, go back and find out how much it costs.
Mm.
And so I did. And my daughter ended up paying for that for me because we had no money,
Mhm.
and which we had to pay her back, of course. And it was probably 3 months into that coaching, of me being coached by a woman called Cynthia. And the phone rang one morning. I was making my son's school lunch, and Tim answered the phone, and he said, there's a guy from America on the phone to you. And I'm like, that weird. And I said, who's that? And it was Steve. And I said, what are you doing ringing me? You already sold me. And he's
Yeah.
gone, Tony is looking for 20 coaches globally.
Mhm.
And Cynthia and I said, you have to put your hat in the ring.
Mhm.
And this is really weird. So, Andrea, the day before, Cynthia had given me homework to do. And that homework was to write a manifestation letter. And I'd never heard what that was. And it's like,
Mhm.
go into the future a year and write a letter to someone you haven't seen for ages, telling them everything you've done. Of course, you don't have to send it.
Mhm.
So Steve's rung, and I'm on the phone to this guy. And he's told me that Tony has opened up this spot, blah, blah. And so I said, oh my God, I said, walk with me. And so I took him into the office on my phone, and I said, let me read the final line of my letter
Mhm.
that I had written for homework yesterday. And it said, Tony Robbins has rung me to congratulate me on an awesome year and asked me to be his coach for Australia and New Zealand. And
Wow.
I knew then that whatever hoops I had to jump through, that was mine.
Mhm.
So once again, my daughter paid for my ticket. I went across to Long Beach and did the training. And of course, that just opened up a stream of income for me and
Yeah.
opportunity to, I never drank the Kool-Aid. I just do want to put that out there, but an opportunity to really understand the psychology behind individuals and businesses and teams and all the rest of it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. You're a, master manifester, I think.
I believe I am.
That is awesome, and that is awesome. I think that what is cool about this story is just how you've gotten creative in financing these dreams, and obviously your family has been very important in your success as well, so that's great that you've been able to to connect with them and to make that all happen.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, is your husband able to work in the US or?
He got his social security number the week we landed. So we're both, yeah. Yeah. It
That's amazing. That's so great. That is
was a gift, a
really,
real gift.
yeah, very cool. And then have you, obviously, you haven't had any regrets with leaving everything behind. You've been enjoying yourself and just letting it unfold. Is that the strategy
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. Look, we're going back in August to see because our daughter had her second little girl 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's wonderful. So we're heading back in August I'll be over there for 3 weeks. And we're not missing Australia. We're not missing our house is only 5 years old. We built it. We're not missing our house.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So we're just loving it here. And yeah, people like you, that there's our communities are just wonderful people and have welcomed us
Yeah.
like family. So it's been
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. Have there been any unexpected challenges with moving into a brand new culture? It wasn't really brand new to you, obviously. You've been coming over here a lot, but
Yeah.
is there any
But there have been differences. Melbourne is, I think, the coffee capital of the world. And we're really missing a really great cappuccino made by a barista that knows what they're doing. And just things like it took me, you talk about fear. I don't know what it was, but it took me 6 months to actually get in the driver's seat of our car. I went round Costco car park. But it's just driving on the other side of the road. I was so nervous about that.
Mhm.
I went and got my license at it. I'd been here a year. I went and got my license. And so I really took my time about that. Business wise, I'm really ramping that up as we speak right now. I've been working still with Australian clients. So it's a time now I got into the US side of business. That's on the horizon.
Mhm. That's awesome. That is awesome. Of course, all the best of luck. I know you're going to just continue to be amazing and shine here in the Denver area in the US, and we're glad to have you here. That's
Oh,
just
thank you.
So, one of the things I always love to ask people is their favorite inspirational quote or saying. I'm such a quote junkie that I love to hear what other people resonate with.
Yeah, there's one that my son, when we were going through tough times, my son, I think he was probably only 17 at the time, and I must have been crying or whatever. And he's come up to me and he said, "Mom," and I've stuck with this. This is almost like a mantra. And he said, "Mom, it'll work out in the end. And if it doesn't work out, it's not the end."
Oh,
And I kind of overlay that on everything now, business building, friendships, whatever it may be. But that's stuck with
mhm.
me.
I love that. I love that. And yeah, just very inspiring. So, well, Bernadette, thank you so much for your time and inspiring the listeners here at the Late Starters Club. I know there's probably a lot of people who have thought about moving halfway across the world. And so it's interesting to hear how you've done it. And that's such a cool story that everything just unfolded so well for you.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrea.
Yep. Thanks. And we'll have just let people know where people can find you easiest. We'll have the links in the show notes, but go ahead and share that with our
Yeah,
listeners.
it's on LinkedIn, Bernadette McClelland on LinkedIn, on YouTube at The Storyteller. And I'm just trying to think. I don't know if Threads
Yep.
is going to be.
I know. I know. As of this
but
recording.
yeah,
Yeah. We'll have links to your website and LinkedIn, all that stuff, YouTube, all in the show notes. But thank you so much for your time.
my
Bye,
pleasure.
everyone.
Thanks so much. Great show.
Hope that was helpful, and make sure you grab the free guide, Top Tools for Late Starters, on the website at latestartersclub.com. And let's turn dreaming into doing.